It was exactly 9 a.m. when Elijah Coleman stepped through the revolving glass doors of Sterling Trust Bank's flagship branch in downtown Chicago. The sleek, modern design of the building gleamed under the clear morning sun. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the expansive lobby with light, casting angular gold reflections that danced across the pristine marble floors. The faint hum of purposeful business filled the air as sharply dressed bankers and advisors moved swiftly behind their desks, attending to clients who stood in neat, orderly lines. The soft chime of a bell sounded every few moments as customers were summoned to the next available teller. Sterling Trust was running like the well-oiled machine Elijah had imagined years ago when he first envisioned the institution. It was a living, breathing testament to discipline, efficiency, and, above all, opportunity. It had his fingerprints on every policy, his vision behind every polished surface. But this morning, Elijah wasn't there as the chairman of Sterling Trust Board. No back-to-back meetings, no press junkets, no negotiations with investors or mergers on his calendar. He was there simply as a customer, performing a routine transaction, a $15,000 cash withdrawal from his personal account. He wasn't wearing his usual tailored suit or his signature platinum watch. Instead, he had opted for something casual and understated, a neatly pressed light blue button-down, khaki pants, and clean white sneakers. He blended in effortlessly with the early morning crowd, just another face in a sea of transactions. But even as he walked quietly toward the tellers, Elijah's sharp eyes were observing everything. A few feet away, he noticed a middle-aged white man in a charcoal-gray blazer standing at the counter. The teller assisting him, a young brunette named Haley from her name tag, smiled warmly. She handed him neatly bundled stacks of bills without a hint of hesitation. Elijah's gaze flicked to the receipt as the man pocketed it. $20,000 in cash. No questions asked. The man offered a polite nod, turned, and exited the bank smoothly, untouched by suspicion. Elijah exhaled slowly. His jaw tensed for half a second before he relaxed it. He had seen this before, felt it in too many spaces. But today, standing here in his own bank, he wasn't going to let it slide. Not this time. Keeping his expression neutral, Elijah approached the teller counters. The line was short, and within moments, he found himself standing in front of a blonde woman in her early 30s. Her nameplate read Erica Dalton. Unlike Haley's interaction with a previous customer, Erica didn't offer a greeting. She didn't smile. She barely acknowledged Elijah's presence before reaching under the counter and sliding a clipboard toward him. "Fill this out," she said flatly, her tone distant, almost bored. "No pleasantries. No recognition. No basic courtesy." Elijah studied her for a long second, his gaze steady and unreadable. Then, without comment, he lowered his eyes to the form, just a standard withdrawal slip. He retrieved a pen from his pocket and carefully filled in the required details. Once finished, he slid the clipboard back across the counter along with his state-issued ID. Erica picked up the withdrawal slip, but she didn't glance at his ID. Not once. Instead, her eyes zeroed in on the dollar amount, and within seconds, she shoved the form back toward him, her expression hardening. "We can't process this," she said curtly, folding her arms across her chest. Elijah's brow furrowed as he brushed his fingertips across the slip. "Excuse me." Erica didn't blink. "We don't handle large cash withdrawals like this." Elijah kept his tone calm. "I just watched that gentleman walk out with 20 grand in cash." He gestured casually toward the entrance where the man had exited less than 5 minutes ago. "You didn't hesitate with him." Her lips flattened into a tight line. "That's different." Elijah leaned forward slightly, his voice cool but unwavering. "Different how?" For the first time, Erica's eyes flicked toward the glass office in the rear of the bank. Standing inside, arms crossed, was Vanessa Holloway, the branch manager. A woman in her mid-40s, Vanessa wore an impeccably tailored suit, her auburn hair pulled into a severe twist. She watched the interaction with thinly veiled scrutiny. Their gazes met, and Vanessa gave a barely perceptible nod. Erica straightened almost immediately, her shoulders squared, bolstered by the unspoken approval of her superior. When she turned back to Elijah, there was a colder sharpness to her expression. She sighed, sounding almost tired of the exchange already. "I told you," she said, tapping the form on the counter. "We can't process this transaction." Elijah inhaled slowly through his nose, willing his patience to hold. "And I'm asking you why." Erica was silent for a moment, her nails tapping rhythmically against the counter in an almost theatrical stall. Finally, she shrugged. "It's unusual," she said with an artificial sweetness. "A withdrawal this large in cash. It raises flags." Elijah let the word hang in the air. Suspicious. He knew exactly what it meant when someone like Erica used it in this context. It wasn't about the money. It was about him, about who they thought he was, or who they decided he wasn't. "You didn't seem suspicious when he made the exact same withdrawal," Elijah replied evenly. They both knew who he meant. "What's the difference, Erica?" There was a flicker of hesitation in her pale blue eyes, a stutter before she quickly shook her head. "Sir, I don't make the rules." A humorless chuckle escaped Elijah's throat. "No, but you sure know how to enforce them selectively." Her posture stiffened, her jaw tightening. "I need to get my manager." She pivoted sharply and strode toward the back office without waiting for permission. Elijah stayed where he was, his fingertips tapping a slow rhythm on the marble countertop. Around him, he could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The low buzz of business hadn't stopped, but it had changed. He could feel the weight of eyes. Bank employees glanced his way and then quickly looked away. Customers shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to notice. A woman in her 50s, standing near the customer service desk, kept glancing at him. Her name tag, pinned to her handbag strap, read Linda Grant. Elijah met her gaze briefly. She offered a small, uncertain smile before quickly looking away. He wasn't angry with her. He understood the role she played in this scene. Silent observer. Curious, maybe even sympathetic, but unwilling to step in. They almost never did. A moment later, Vanessa Holloway emerged from her office, heels clicking against the marble as Erica trailed behind her like a loyal shadow. Vanessa's expression was carefully neutral, professional, as she approached the counter where Elijah stood. "Good morning," she said, her voice polished. "I understand you're requesting a large cash withdrawal." "I am," Elijah replied without emotion. "We have security protocols in place for withdrawals of this size," Vanessa explained smoothly. "For the safety of our customers and staff." Elijah's jaw flexed. "So what does that mean for me?" Vanessa offered him a sympathetic look that failed to reach her sharp hazel eyes. "It means we need to verify additional information before we can proceed." "You didn't need to verify anything when the other customer withdrew more," Elijah said plainly. "I can't speak to other transactions," Vanessa replied, her tone sharpening. "But in this case, we need to confirm the source of your funds. You have my account number in front of you." "Look it up," Elijah countered. Vanessa's mouth tightened. "I need you to cooperate, Mr. Coleman." Elijah let out a quiet, incredulous laugh. "I am cooperating. I'm standing here, providing everything you need, and you're still making excuses. That's not protocol. That's profiling." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Even Erica flinched. Vanessa's lips parted, but before she could speak, she lifted her hand subtly. Across the room, Thomas Reed, a broad-shouldered security guard in his mid-30s, stood from where he'd been leaning near the door. His expression blank, he began walking toward them. Elijah's heart thudded in his chest, but his expression remained impassive. He had seen this scene before, too many times. A black man, deemed a threat in spaces where he was supposed to belong. "I'm going to ask you again," Vanessa said, her voice still professionally smooth. "Can you verify the source of these funds?" "My paycheck," Elijah replied, his voice low, "like every time before." "And the amount of your last deposit?" Vanessa pressed. Elijah exhaled. "You have my account number right there." "That's not how we do things," she answered. Elijah's laugh was hollow. "I've banked here for years. No one's ever done this before." His voice sharpened as he took a step closer. "So tell me, Vanessa, What about me makes you think I don't belong here? Silence fell. A tense, suffocating silence. Thomas Reed approached, his posture tense. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, he said. Elijah slowly turned to meet his gaze. He found no hesitation there. No questioning. Just compliance with orders given. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapped the record button, and held it up. You're refusing to process my withdrawal, he said, his voice calm. Despite having my ID, my account info, and despite processing a larger withdrawal for another customer just before me. Vanessa's jaw clenched. Erica shifted uncomfortably. Step outside, Thomas repeated, less certain now. Elijah's grip on the phone tightened. And if I don't? Thomas didn't hesitate this time. He grabbed Elijah's arm, his grip firm, and pulled. Elijah braced himself as he was dragged backward. His shoulder collided with Thomas's chest as he was shoved toward the door. Harder the second time, until his back struck the glass with a dull thud. The doors opened automatically, and in seconds he was outside. The cold morning air slapped his skin as his ID card clattered to the ground in front of him. Thomas stared at him impassively from the doorway. Then another figure moved. Marcus Johnson, another security guard, black, around Elijah's age, stepped forward. Without a word, he crouched, picked up Elijah's ID, dusted it off, and handed it back to him. This place, Marcus muttered, always does this. Elijah's hand brushed Marcus's as he took the card. Doesn't matter what you do, Marcus continued, his voice low and heavy. Degree, experience, doesn't matter. They only want us in the jobs they think we belong in. Elijah stared at him, heart pounding. Then he pulled out his phone again. This time he made a call. Derek, he said when the other end picked up, I need you at the Chicago branch. Now. Derek Langston, Sterling Trust COO, responded immediately. 15 minutes. 15 minutes that felt like hours. Inside the bank, business resumed as usual. Vanessa returned to her post. Erica to hers. Thomas stayed by the door like a sentinel, until a sleek black sedan pulled up. Derek stepped out. Early 50s, white, silver hair cut neatly. His presence commanded attention the way real authority did. He bypassed Thomas without a word, heading straight inside. Elijah and Marcus followed. Vanessa's face shifted the moment she saw Derek. She straightened her blazer and forced a smile. Mr. Langston, she greeted. No. Derek cut her off. Because if you had done your job, this wouldn't be happening. Vanessa flinched. You refuse a withdrawal? He asked Erica. She stammered. I was following protocol. Protocol? Derek's voice was ice. You mean profiling? No one spoke. Did you even check his account? Derek asked Vanessa. She hesitated. Derek nodded. You're done here. Sir, Vanessa began. Effective immediately, Derek snapped. And if I find this has happened to others? There will be consequences. His gaze fell on Thomas. That includes security. He turned to Marcus. You're promoted. Effective today. Marcus looked stunned. Derek then turned to Elijah. You want this place cleaned out? Elijah nodded. Completely. Derek gestured to Erica. Process his withdrawal. Erica did. Silently. Carefully counting out the $15,000. Elijah took the cash. He turned to Marcus and handed him one stack. Take the day off, Elijah said. Marcus nodded, his hand closing around the money. Elijah turned back to Vanessa. Their eyes met one last time. You should check my ID, he said. And then he walked out. This time, no one stopped him.